So hello everybody, it's another Tuesday and I am here today with Miriam Watsemba. Miriam is I'm going to read her bio. So welcome Miriam first. Thank you so much for joining us from Uganda.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Amina. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You just told me that it's really nice and hot and sunny in Uganda, which I'm very jealous about because we here are having lots of snow. Today, actually, the snow melted. Yesterday, I screamed when I woke up because there was snow on the ground and I really wanted to be back in Uganda. So hopefully soon. So let me tell you all about Miriam. Miriam Watsemba is a documentary photographer based in Kampala with a background in journalism and communications from Makerere University. Her passion lies in storytelling, and she believes that stories are an effective avenue for driving change and development. Her journey in documentary photography commenced in 2017 when she encountered UPPA, Uganda Press Photo Awards, through one of their workshops organized in partnership with Canon. She has since then participated in several awards, mentorship opportunities, and professional training in documentary storytelling. Watsemba's work focuses on telling stories of vulnerable and unheard groups, amplifying the voices of refugees in northern Uganda. Several of her documentary photography projects have been exhibited by Entree, Moleskine Foundation, and Uganda Press Photo Award, both in Uganda and overseas. So that's quite an accomplishment. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Amina. Thank you for having me today.
So tell us a little bit about the personal side of Miriam Watsemba.
Watsemba Miriam is a girl from Bududa. Bududa has become very popular in the world because of the landslides.
Oh.
So every time I'm introducing myself, I like to say I'm Watsemba Miriam from Bududa, just to intentionally put out a different narrative about Bududa, that there is lots of good and substance that can come out of there.
Yeah, where is Bududa if you're looking at Kampala? Which direction?
Bududa is in the eastern part of Uganda. So as you leave Kampala on Jinja Road, you go through Mukono, and then you get to Jinja, you get to Iganga, you get to Tirini, Palisa, and then Budaka, and then you're in Mbale. So Mbale is towards the east part of Uganda.
Oh, okay. And you said you like yogurt or yoga?
I do. Yes, I love yogurt, and people like to make fun of it because yogurt is my friend on bad days, on good days. It's an all-time friend. You definitely get to know that about me if you stayed with me for 2 weeks. What else? I'm really very passionate about storytelling, and I love telling stories from my heart, that are stories that in the spaces where I'm able to be authentic. I love to tell stories of people and amplify their voices. I love to represent people's truths. Every time I meet someone and then I hear their story and it clicks with me and I feel like, okay, this is their truth. I want the rest of the world to know that this is who they are and this is their truth. And it doesn't have to be your truth, but it is their truth and it needs to be heard.
Where does passion for storytelling come from?
Where does my passion for storytelling come from? It's a couple of things. It's a couple of things, but growing up, I think it has a lot to do with Bududa. That's why I think I keep talking about it a lot. Growing up in Bududa, so I'd go to school in Kampala and then go for holidays in Bududa. Mm-hmm. So when I went to school in Kampala, I was exposed to a lot of things. Multiple opportunities. I see how people get to do things, how people make money, but also you get to watch the things on TV. And then I would go back to Bududa. It would be like a world so different from the rest of the world. And sometimes I used to feel like the only thing that would make a difference would be just to tell the story of Bududa, and it would make a whole lot of difference. An example I like giving is a very popular sport that Bududa has had from when I was little, for as long as I've lived. That sport has been there. It's called bullfighting, bull wrestling of bulls.
I didn't know they had that in Uganda.
See, people do not know it exists because it's only in Bududa. So people get bulls. People who own bulls will come together and make appointments, and then on a particular Saturday they go to the village grounds and they bring their bulls, and then they bet money, and then the bull that wins the wrestling, the owner of that bull is given that money. So every time I'd go back home, I feel like this would be such a big opportunity for tourism. And then when you go to other parts of Uganda, like the western part of Uganda, people are making, there is revenue coming from people's cultures, just being able to have their homes and how they do their things locally. They have organized systems where tourists will come for community walks, and the community members make money out of that. So I'd feel like the only difference between the other communities and Bududa is no one knows Bududa's story, so it just remains a local sport and it's not making anything. But also the other thing was the landslides. When I was young, of course, because I was in Bududa, I would know when the landslides happen. I would see how people suffer and how many people are dying. And yet when I go back to school in class, they tell you, if you can only practice terracing on mountains, there will be no landslides. If you do this kind of farming, you wouldn't have landslide even in a mountainous area. But when I go back home, I'm 7 years old, and I can't tell people. So I used to feel like I have the solution, but I can't say it out. I can't voice it out. So every time I would hear another story about landslides and I see people losing their lives and crops, I feel like I wish people would just listen to me. I wish I could speak and tell these people. So sometimes when I'm walking in the village, I see people planting crops the wrong way, and I feel like my teacher told me the right thing to do, but I don't know how to tell these people the right thing to do because I'm only 7 years. So I promised myself that when I grow up, I was going to help people like me speak up because their voices can't be heard. So it was an inherent thing, painfully but inherent, that when I grow up, I want to be able to amplify people's voices. So from a young age, I knew I was going to be a journalist. But yes, partly the reason I was really inspired to want to amplify other people's voices is because I grew up feeling like I had answers, but I didn't have the voice to be heard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you went to school at Macquarie. You did mass communications and journalism, photography. What drew you into photojournalism?
With photojournalism and specifically documentary is I found that it's a whole process. It's a journey. When you meet people, you go through a whole process of them getting to trust you. It's like a process of lovemaking. The people, it's like I think symbolically, it's like someone gets to trust you, and then they take off their clothes and they take off layers, and they show you who they are, and they trust that you're going to respect who they are and you're going to protect who they are and you'll not harm them. And then you're able to capture that truth, and they know that when you represent it, it's going to be honest, it's going to be authentic, it's not going to be exaggerated or validated. Yes, so I found it to be a process that allows for authenticity to happen for the other person, but also for me. Because with writing, I could easily write and use the words that I feel are right, or that I think this English word describes this better and all. Maybe it's true, but sometimes I might be speaking to someone who knows no word in English, and they're telling me what they're telling me in a totally different language. Maybe I could translate it to English in my writing, because of course photography still can't avoid the writing. You have to do the captions. But at least there is this truth in a picture that I cannot alter. Yes.
Absolutely.
So for me, that part of being able to connect authentically with someone's truth without altering it was deep for me. Yes.
So what made you choose refugees in northern Uganda, and does that include the child soldiers that have ultimately come out of that tragedy with Kony in northern Uganda?
So my heart got drawn to refugees when I made my first trip to Gulu, and when I was in St. Mary's Lacho Hospital. It's a big private hospital. I think it's been around for about 60 years or so. So it was around throughout the whole period of the Lord's Resistance Army War against the government. It's been around throughout that entire period, and from all the 20 years of that Kony civil war, that was a hospital that was treating people. All the people were going there. So now, many years after the Kony war, there's refugees coming to Uganda. It is still the same hospital that is receiving the refugees. So it's been a home for, that kind of people and hospitality. So when I was at that hospital, I sat down and I was listening to some of the stories that people had gone through. And I was in disbelief. I could not believe that I lived in the same Uganda and I was at school taking yogurt and there were people dying in the same Uganda, 4 hours drive away from Kampala.
Yeah.
It baffled my mind, like, how is it so unbalanced? Yes. Like, how was this happening in the same Uganda for 20 years? That means we went to school and we grew up. I don't know, someone got married and gave birth to children, and there was a whole other part of Uganda in bloodshed all the time. But more than that was the details in the stories. So sitting down with these people that had gone through these things and hearing their stories got my heart to think of, or I felt like they had not been heard. Like, these stories need to be heard. What I felt like what the media had showed was the statistics, but it had not paid attention to the stories behind the statistics. I felt like the people behind these statistics had not been listened to. There is real life stories and real people and lives and people that need to be heard, people that have been heartbroken, someone with emotion who needs to be told, you know, you went through this, and they're listened to, people that have real mental issues. And then it's so funny that, unlike, okay, now it's good in the recent times that people are paying attention to mental health being a real issue in Uganda. But generally, I think as Africans, or in Uganda particularly, there was no attention being paid to mental health. It was looked at as something that has to do with shame.
Yeah.
So being in Gulu and sitting with people who had suffered lots of trauma, I remember meeting a man who had lost his speech. He could not speak, and he was about 60 years old, but he was born a normal person with speech, but he had suffered so much pain that he was so traumatized he could not speak anymore. He just all the time. So I think this is someone who has mentally struggled with this for so long. He sits in a room during the day and then he screams and runs because he sees dead bodies that you're not seeing. He sees things that other people are not seeing. So that made me feel like there are so many stories. I cannot tell all of them. And maybe I cannot help everyone, but I also can't sit back and do nothing. So my main motivation for the refugees in northern Uganda was I wanted people to also hear the stories behind the many statistics. When they say that that Uganda is home, is one of the biggest hosts of refugees in Uganda, with more than 1 million refugees, and the number is increasing rapidly all the time. Even during lockdown, it was increasing despite the borders being closed. The statistics are good, but what are the stories behind the statistics? That was my main
So where
motive.
are these refugees coming from? Just so we, like, our readers or our listeners can understand.
So most of the refugees are coming from South Sudan because of the war that had been happening in South Sudan for quite a number of years. We also have refugees from Congo, but the biggest majority is from South Sudan. There's some from Rwanda for different reasons, and Congo, but most of the people that I met were from South Sudan.
And they have been affected by the Kony War as well?
So this is where the irony comes in from, and that's where northern Uganda becomes a very has a soft spot in my heart, is because northern Uganda was affected by the Kony War.
Yeah.
So most of the people that are living in northern Uganda are people who have been internally displaced. They are former internally displaced persons. And these are people who are just starting to heal and rebuild. And they're starting to heal and rebuild thanks to some organizations that work with the internally displaced people, that really try to help people. But generally, there's so many people who are trying to heal without any help, without having ever sat with a mental health expert help them go through the process of healing, with unforgiveness. Some still have physical pain and wounds from gunshots and things like that. Some have become impaired. So there are former internally displaced persons who are in the process of healing, and at the same time, northern Uganda is one of the biggest hosts of refugees in Uganda. So you have hurt people or damaged people who are healing, hosting another group of damaged people. Wow. So it's like a mix of stories.
Like a powder keg.
Yeah. Yes, it's a mix of stories, and for me, it was, these stories need to be heard. So while I'm speaking for refugees, I also have I also feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done to also listen to the stories of the host, because actually my journey with refugees began this way. There was a lot of things in the news about hostile relationships between the host communities and the refugees, saying the host communities are being very, aggressive, and they don't want the refugees to come into their space, and they're, I was watching such stories in the news. So I got out to find out, why would you be mean to someone who has come for refugee because they're running away from war and things like that? And then when I got there, I got more empathetic, because I have suffered loss for 20 years. I lost all my family. I lost all my children. I lost a leg. I lost speech. I've suffered the same things you've suffered. And when I'm barely starting to scratch ground and get back, you are telling me I need to share my space with someone else. What if that someone comes with war? So it's more than just saying host communities need to, get more friendly and more hospitable. What are the host communities' stories? What are their pains? Who is listening to them?
Yeah.
Reason for storytelling, why I love storytelling, is because I do feel like storytelling is the missing gap between the people for whom the policies are made and the policymakers. I do feel like if we use stories to inform the policymakers of what actually needs to be done, what is happening, they'll be able to make more relevant policies. Yeah. Because if you come and sit down at a hotel in Kampala and make a policy saying, we need to encourage the host communities to be more friendly. If I come around and show you the stories of, and share with you the stories of the host communities, and probably it would inform you why they are the way they are. And maybe instead of saying we should encourage them to be more friendly, you'd think of, okay, I think we need to get some help, or mental health help, or we need to get some actual health care to first attend to the host communities, show them that someone cares, someone is listening to them, then we can ask them to also listen and care for someone else.
Absolutely. With such heavy topics, because they've got to be heavy, how do you deal with it emotionally? How do you come back home and just be Miriam Watsemba without letting this impact you mentally, emotionally, physically?
I'm so happy you asked that question. So happy you did, because it's real, it's very important, and very few people get to think about it. And also, I've read so many stories of photographers that have committed suicide, because I'm very passionate about documentary photography and storytelling. So I love to read about the people that came before. If you've read Bang Bang Club,
yes,
the four photographers, yes, that were photographing the apartheid policy in South Africa and how they committed suicide. Kevin Carter, and he won all these awards and he still committed suicide. So it's real. But I'm thankful that some of the organizations that are working with refugees have the option of being able to speak to a mental health expert, someone to help you, like counselors. They have counselors. So I think on that journey of working with refugees and encountering all these stories, it has also helped me to appreciate the importance of mental health better, first of all, because in the culture I grew up in, mental health was not a thing. Yeah. And because people get to trust you, they let you in on their most intimate parts.
Yeah.
And sometimes you cannot help. I remember an experience I had in Gulu. I found these two ladies, they were sisters. I think one was around her 50s and the other was around her 60s. And they had suffered all their lives, like from when they were teenagers. They went through the Coney War, got displaced, lost their husbands, lost their children, they'd been gang raped. Like, they'd really gone through it all. And now they were homeless. And they were trying to camouflage as refugees in order to get some help. And so I took on their story. And the story did well when I presented it to one of the organizations that works with refugees. It's called Refugee Law Project, Makerere University Refugee Law Project. When I presented it to them, the project manager was really touched. So they moved really fast and got to them, accelerated the process of registration, and managed to get them, healthcare, got them to hospital. So one of them had a hernia, and she went for operation. So they took her for operation and paid for it, and she was discharged, and she was fine. They gave them some things, mattresses, what. So I was really happy of like, oh God, thank you so much. At least something is being done. So I come back to Kampala, and 2-3 days later, I get a call that she's passed away.
Oh.
That really hit me so hard.
I bet.
It hit me so hard.
Yeah.
I think I took like a week of no shooting, and I was in disbelief. I got this lady's picture and I made it a wallpaper on my laptop, and it stayed there. I don't know for how many months. It took me so long to move on. I took so long to share the story. I think I shared the story after almost 6 months, because every time I would try to share it, I would miss the words. I would miss the words. I don't know what to type because I was so attached to it. And then I was not allowed to go for burial because that whole bureaucracy of organizations and things like that. They have to leave the body in a mortuary and stuff like that. So it was hard. But going back to your question of how do I come back, I'm very thankful to God that I'm a very spiritual person. So I didn't ever think that photography would be one of the things that I pray about, or like I'd pray about a project. But I've had days where I go back to my hotel room and I just want to kneel down and have a moment with God and tell him, please help me. Like, this is so much, like this is too much, and I can't help this person, I can't help this one. But I felt this, I had this, I wish I could do this. And then I just cried my heart to God, like, please help me, but also help me and help these people. Like the pictures I'm taking, maybe someone will see them and reach out to them. Maybe they will get help. Please open up the world to come and help this person if I can't do this. But also, I have learned to take time off if I'm tired or overwhelmed. I'll have a day in and be quiet and do the things that matter and really be quiet and not have the pressure. Because my deep inspiration is I want their voices to be heard. Yeah. It means it's very easy to be on the pressure to, I need this story to go out. I need this story to go out. And with that pressure, it's easy to end up being overwhelmed. So sometimes you've had so many things and they're weighing down on you, and the pressure to share it is there. So I've learned how to pull back and know that I'm not being demanded by anyone to have this story out. I'm doing this story from my heart. And
exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And there is no must that so and so is supposed to hear this story today or anything like that. And I'll take time, and when my head is in the right space and my heart is in the right space, then I'll work on that story. And I've found that in those moments when I do that, when I get back to the story, I am more authentic. I'm not doing it because it needs to get out, because I need it to be heard. And the few times I've fallen for that pressure, nothing happened. And the other times when I really took off time, and then I came back and I was authentic and I did this story, truly from my heart and things like that. It's almost like people read the emotions in pictures, or they read the spirit behind the pictures or behind the stories. And when it's real, people are able to connect. And then you get these phone calls, and then you get someone saying, can I send 100,000 shillings for you to help this lady do this, for you to help this person? And yeah, so that has been very helpful. So what I've learned through the process of how to come back to myself is, I've summed it up in one word: authenticity. Authenticity when I'm shooting, authenticity to myself. I always check to make sure, am I being authentic? What is the reason I'm doing this? Why is the reason I'm posting this picture? Why do I want to do this story? Why do I feel this way? So I've come to that point of always slowing down to make sure, am I being authentic? And if I'm being authentic, it will feel right, it will feel peaceful, because it's very easy to also get caught up as a photographer with all this pressure that you're seeing and the stories that you're hearing and how bad they are, but also the pressure to share them also sometimes creeps in that temptation of comparison. Yes. Of, you need to be putting these stories out, shooting it like the other photographers.
Social media makes us do that. Like
social media, yes. You have to do it like the other photographer. You have to put it out like the other photographer. So for me, it has gone back to authentic. Am I doing this story this way because so and so is doing it this way, because it's a thing that is working, because it's a thing that is going to get me here, or because this is how I authentically feel about it? This person is truth, and this is how they would love for it to be represented. Yeah. So I think it's two things: being a spiritual person, being able to pray. If someone has that with them, because people have different beliefs. Personally, I do believe in God. I'm a Christian, so I have that relationship with God, and it really sobers me up, even on the most funny days, and even the days where the stories are way bigger than me and it's overwhelming, and I just feel like there's no way I'm going to represent this person's story so well, because it's deep, and no photograph of mine is going to bring it out. I really do talk to God about everything. But then secondly, it's that part of being authentic with yourself. And when you feel like you're getting under the pressure, or you're getting off you're starting to do things for any other reason, or because of what you saw, because of what you heard, or things like that, take time and sit back and wait until you're in the right space, in the right mind, and you do feel like you're being true to yourself. Then do the story.
Stories. Yeah. How do you get your subjects to open up about such hardships that they've gone on? Because how do you get them to trust you, first of all? How do you get access? Like, how do you find these stories? Do you work through an NGO, or do you have access because you've now, ingratiate yourself into the community, and they know that you're authentic, and you're not going to tell their story for sensationalism, but you're going to tell them to get the message out? How do you get that access?
So I was just having that conversation yesterday with a group of storytellers, and they were talking about, so we had gone out, and my colleague had come back, and he didn't have pictures, but he had very good information and good research. And these people had opened up and told him the stories and stuff, but don't allow him to photograph. And I'd really just given him books and textbooks, take this and go on. And then on the other hand, I'd come back with personal stories and pictures. So then that's how the conversation came about. And I was telling them that I think one thing I've learned, or I've come to notice, or I've experienced in the field, is when you approach people and you are just one of them, they don't feel like you are a photographer or a researcher who is up here, and then they are down here and they are subject, and you're coming to study them. Then they'll open up. The moment you make them feel like they are subjects for study, and you're the photographer and you're up there and you're coming to study them, you lose it. If at all they actually give you an attention, they're just going to give you information that they think is legally acceptable, basic information, but they're not going to open up. And then they'll let you go, and most likely they'll ask you for money because it's a job. Yeah. But when you come in as someone who is one of them, and you want to understand them and to listen to them, and you really just gel in, you notice that they will let you in even the most intimate part of themselves. So you see how I'm dressed here like this, with all my colors and earrings and lipstick and hair done. When I'm going to do a story, this cuteness is not there. So I think 3 weeks ago I was in Karamoja. Yeah. And if you found me, I look like a Karima John girl. Not really like I was dressed in beads and all, but a basic dress that looks like part of a community. Basic, flip-flops, like sandals that looks like the community. My hair was in braids, and they were intentionally, outgrown braids. And I was like, not like you have to look ragged, but what I'm saying is,
you need to fit
for
in.
Example, you need to fit in. I wouldn't go to do a story in a rural place, and then I'm having earrings on, and my eyebrows are done, and my lipstick is done, because automatically you're going to look like, you don't look like one of us.
Yeah.
So you're here to judge us, or to get something from us. You're going to sell us, or if not, if you really must give your information, you must pay us. So I think for a photographer, it's being part of the community, fit in as much as possible. Go to a place, for example, when I'm going to shoot in a place, I carry a variety of clothes, and people always say, oh my God, you really do overpack for the trips and all. But I carry, okay, of course, I've done research about the place before I go, the kinds of culture there, what is acceptable, what is not, because there's some places in Uganda where you cannot wear pants as a lady.
Right.
So I'll know the basics, and then I'll pack my clothes. But when I get there, I'll also be observant on the day of arrival, because you're arriving, maybe you go right to the hotel. So you look around and see what are the people in the market wearing, how are they behaving, what are they like, and things like that. And then to begin with is your appearance. Drop your earrings, drop the eyebrows. It's just a week or 2 months, and you'll get back to that life after. So drop those things. You don't have to have them. You don't have to look good. Sometimes my nails are intentionally not done, depending on the place that I'm going to go to. And then when you get there, be one of them. If you know the language, speak their language. If the ladies are seated on a mat, sit on a mat with them, talk to them. If they're doing something, sorting bins, help out and make it a conversation. Sometimes a conversation is not even part of exactly what you're out there for and stuff. And then you show them that, oh, mama, I understand. Oh, you have 4 children. Oh, that's good. You see, we have 5 children at home and stuff. Then, hey, so you also 4 children. You know, my 4 children, one of my child is in the other. They're starting to let you in. And then eventually start asking follow-up questions and in line with what you're doing. And then before you know it, they are happy to share that truth. They're happy to let you into their houses. Because in Karamoja, by the time we left, they were starting to carry items because I was documenting about their culture, items, the regalia of Karimajongs and all. By the time we were into the second hour, they are going to the house and picking the items for me. Mama, we also have this. We also use this item for this. They started getting the items from their houses. Hey, we don't have this here, but our neighbor has it. They send a child to the neighbors to bring it because I'm one of them. I am with them. I'm seated with them.
When do you actually bring the camera out?
So after it's the worst mistake you can make is to walk in straight up and then you just have your camera out there. No, I think you need to first create some rapport, some friendship, and then you're able to lead them. Now they've shared their story and stuff, you say, I really do like that story, blah blah blah, but can I take a picture of this? Then take a picture of it. Before you know it, someone might say, you know what, I've not taken a picture in a long time. Let me go and wear my favorite dress and take a picture of me. That picture isn't really part of your project, right, but it's breaking walls for you. So she'll go dress up in her nice dress and she comes and you do a mini photo shoot of her. Meanwhile, before you know it, she's telling the children, what did you want? You wanted this and this. Okay, let me send the child to get it. So there are cases where it's like that because you're going in as a photographer yourself. But however, there are also assignments where you've been hired as a photographer by an organization and the organization has already identified the people, you know, that you're going to work with. So the people are expecting it. And those are easier. But even as much as they're easier, and you could just go because they already know you're a photographer and, you know, they know the drill that you're going to take their pictures, they will not say no. Still, the emotion they will give you and the truth they will give you will be different if you just come in as, yo, I'm a photographer, they've hired me, you're part of this project, I'm going to shoot you. Yeah. Even if you have such access, it's already 70% help for you. It's good. But do the other 30%. Respect the people. See them as people just as you are. Show them that you are not any better than them or anything. You are part of them and you understand them. You know, like there's that sympathy, there's that respect, there's that authenticity of I see you, I hear you. I really do see you and I really do hear you. And I want people to hear you. I want people to understand you. Your truth is important. And the other thing I've loved about being part of the people first is I have found that I end up developing another story within the story that I'm going to do. Oh, okay. Because people share so much. Yes, people share so much.
So sort of and then like you get 2 different sides to one side.
Yeah.
And do you put together a shot list of things that you really want to get because you've done your research prior? Or are you just shooting as the story develops and they're opening up?
So, of course, by the time you go to the field, you at least have a skeleton of what you need or what you're looking for, because it's also not very good to go and spend 10 hours and come up with pictures all over the place and no particular direction. So it's important to first do the the work inside. I remember in most of the trainings that I've attended with so we have Uganda Press Photo Award in Uganda, and it does trainings with Canon. And they bring different trainers in photography to train us. So there's a particular documentary photographer called Georgina Goodwin. She's a very good documentary photographer and trainer. And she keeps talking about how almost the 80% of a project is the planning that you do before you go. Because this planning and you know, I don't know if it's out there in other countries, I don't know if it's there in Canada, but it's common that photographers would think their work is just to shoot. There's no other job that a photographer does, which is so wrong, because most of the work of a photographer is having the information right, know what is happening. If it's about culture, if it's about the politics, it's about refugees. Know about where the refugees in Uganda are coming from. Know how many they are, where are they settling, where are they settling there, where are they living, where they're coming from. You read up before you go, and then besides the reading up, also build up on what you're going to look for in the field. Sometimes if a client has called you, let's say an organization, and they're taking you here and they're telling you they're looking for success stories about this and this, what example can we use? We could use, say, COVID. Maybe someone says they call you up to do a story on COVID and how COVID has affected life or has changed life. Take time and just map it out and say, okay, I have COVID here. What could COVID have changed? Then you say it could have changed people's employment. It could have changed people's ways of eating at home. It could have changed how people spend their time, leisure time. It could have changed this. And then from all those options, pick out which options are more relevant to the organization you're working for. And then you say, okay, it could have changed employment. Employment is the most important thing to this. Then break down employment. What is it about employment? Was someone a teacher and now they are a gardener? Was someone a DJ and now they are not working? Has the not working caused them to lose their family or their wife? So now you start breaking down the details, because it's also very easy to say, okay, I'm going to shoot about COVID. And then you just travel to a 4-5 hours drive away place to shoot about COVID. What are you going to shoot? Washing hands, loss of jobs, people dying, hospitals. You can't shoot everything about COVID. Yes.
Yeah.
But at least it's important to put in the work before you go, zero down on what exactly you want, have something to guide you, such that when you go, you make sure, even if I get so many other extra things, do I have core images about this? Then get the core images about what exactly you want, but then also allow yourself breathing space, because you're in this space and there's all these stories. Shoot all the extras you need, but have your core filled first. Yes.
So let's back it up a little bit. Did you have a mentor when you first decided you wanted to be a documentary photographer?
I had a lot of help from Uganda Press Photo Award. Again, it's not exactly like help because they say, oh, Miriam, you're so nice, let's help. It was deliberate. I mentioned that I did journalism and communication at Makerere University.
Yeah.
And Makerere is in Uganda. I did it in Uganda. So I'll give you a brief about our education in Uganda. It's a struggle for the fittest. They're not going to give you everything.
Right.
I remember for 4 years in Makerere, I think I held the camera not more than 10 times. Why? Because you are, let's say, 160 students or 140, and there are 60 cameras or 80 cameras. And those 80 cameras are being shared by students from all the 4 years, because journalism was 4 years. So the first years are using the same cameras, the second years are still, And so now for you, let's say you're in the 4th year, you're about 100 in your class or 160. Each of these years has about 100 plus students. All of those are looking at those 100 cameras in the same laboratory. So when you're given a camera, it's given to you for a few hours, and then you have to bring it back. You can't stay with a camera for more than a day. You can't go with it home. So I barely touch the cameras at school. So in most cases, when you finish your degree in Makerere or in university, and maybe the private universities have it better, but for me, I went to Makerere University, and when you finish your degree there and you really want to get hands-on in production, any part of journalism that is production, you have to put in the work yourself. You start from zero. And I think that's one of the things that has made it very hard to make photography professionalized. So when I get out of school and I figure out I really love telling stories, I love being in the field, because when I got out and I got a job as a communications person. And it was good, but I found that I was most lively when I was in the field. I would be in office and I can't wait for when we are going to the field so that I get to take pictures. Yes. So when I figured that out, I needed to learn how to use the camera, because yes, I had 4 years in school, but I had no clue how to use the camera. I didn't know which cameras existed. I didn't know what Canon is or what Nikon is and what versions are there and things like that. And then So you start looking for answers. And I always had this desire of, what if only I could meet people who specifically teach this, it would be so nice. And then boom, Uganda Press Photo Award for me happened like answered prayer. I found Uganda Press Photo Award, and they were organizing a workshop about, I think it was called Hands on Your Camera. I attended that workshop. I went for the first workshop. It was about 3 days, and whoa, it was like heaven on earth. Like they were bringing cameras, and everyone, I like had my own camera to myself. Yo, I was on sharing the camera, and I could have it for the whole day, and everyone had a camera. And then there was a trainer telling you, okay, this is the on button. This is how you do this. You do this way, and he was teaching everything, and it was free. The workshop was free.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like unbelief. So after that, I started stalking Uganda Press Photo Award. In short, it is UPPA. So I started stalking UPPA, and I think I attended every training that UPPA organized between 2016 and 2017. I attended all of them. So because I was very enthusiastic and very into it, and I really loved it, and I didn't know, but I was really interested, UPPA took me on for their mentorship program. And the mentorship program was a real life changer. It was a 7-month mentorship program where you go through a process with a mentor. You're 3 people, students, so they get you 3 mentors from Spain called Sumi Saduni. And so you have a mentor, and you have 7 months to come up with a project and write and write the concept and go and shoot and bring back, and they take you back to the field and eventually edit and select up the photos and then have an exhibition. So when I say I had a lot of help, it was, yes, I had mentors available to me, readily available through Uganda Press Photo Award, because I was stepping into an industry in a country where documentary photography was not really known.
No.
It's just now that it's starting to come up. The photography that was known was weddings and fashion and beauty and things like that. So the people you'd find who you'd have to call mentors, they know how to use the camera, but they were not into storytelling or anything like that. They are into gigs. When is the next wedding? When is the next wedding? And yet, personally, I always felt like there was more with photography. So when I say I had a lot of help, yes, I had, to answer your question, yes, I had mentors. In fact, I had mentors. I had a lot of professional help, but it was through self-initiative or being available for the opportunities that were available for us. And through PPA, I got to learn that there were other opportunities available for training in Uganda, even outside Uganda, in Africa, and things like that. Yeah.
So I don't know if I told you. So I run an organization called Cameras for Girls in Uganda. And I come to Uganda once a year. I was supposed to be there in August, but with COVID, I couldn't come. And so what I do is every time I come, I will train over 3 days girls who are finished university at Makerere or still in their last year of journalism studies. And over 3 days, they learn how to use the camera. But they get to keep the camera. They get, once I return home, I then continue this with online training throughout the whole year. So we go through storytelling. We go through, mostly it's based on journalism because they're learning how to tell stories using the camera as a tool. So we run that for the whole year. So based on your experience, even though it's with UPPA, what would you tell a younger girl who somebody who got a hold of the camera, learned how to use it, really wants a taste for this life, but doesn't know where to start? What should she do, and how should she get to where you are?
So I think I'll tell them, one, they should not self-compare or listen to anyone who is not doing what they want to do, even if that person is also a photographer. Most likely they're going to sell to them what their problems are, what their challenges are, what their fears and limitations are. What you should do is, if you must look for advice or for help, look for it from the people that are doing what you want to do. However, it doesn't mean that the other photographers that are not doing what you want to do not have anything that they can add on you. They could add something on you. It's important to keep relationships with them, to keep friendships with them, because Maybe they would help you with equipment when you're starting out. They could help you learn how to use the camera. So, I mean, I started out going on weddings with some of the wedding photographers, and I would be their assistant and help them out. But I think I listened too much to them, and at some point I got discouraged, and I lost a lot of time in self-comparison and doubting this whole documentary thing, because it was not as popular, it was not as, glamorous. I had not seen anyone, that had a successful story in it, until I landed on Edward Echwalu. When I did see Edward Echwalu's life and hear his story, for me it was a symbol of possibilities. He was, you know what, this may not be very common, and all the people around you might be saying this about this, but look at this man. He's at the BBC, there's possibilities here. So what I'm saying to the people that are starting out is, look for people who are doing exactly what you want to do, because they'll give you the right energy. They'll show you a array of possibilities. I'd never talked to Echwalu in person. I had not seen him in person, but I just used to follow his Instagram and see his stories and see how he does his thing. And the fact that his life was also not a life I'd be like, yo, I wouldn't want to have a life like that. His life was, a responsible and decent life. And for me, that was, yeah, this is possible, and this is where I want to be. But I think to summarize it is, look for people that speak the same language with you, the language of your soul. If you want to tell stories, it is possible. And maybe the other thing is that everything you imagine in the lines of storytelling and what you feel in your heart, the kind of stories you want to tell, they are valid, they are real, they are true. There is an audience out there looking for exactly that, and they're waiting for a Ugandan girl like you to do it. And if you do not do it, this universe will get someone else to do it, and you watch them do it. So what I'm saying is, your ideas are not crazy, and they're not stupid, and just because no one else is doing them, they're not fake. If you look close enough, you'll attract the right people. Just don't listen to the people who are not doing what you want to do. Look for the right people.
For that is awesome, Miriam. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings the end to our interview. I really want to take the time to thank you so much for doing this. Your story was amazing, and I wish you all the very best. And stay true to your story. I'll keep following, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon too, Amina.
Okay, bye-bye.